Hello, everyone. Welcome to LLK number 51. That is Knit with Laura and Lola. I am Laura Nelkin. I'm a knitwear designer. I live in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region, and I am joined by my alter ego, Lola. If you don't know Lola, she's a little bit spicy. She's what makes these lives fun. She keeps me on my toes, keeps me relaxed. I have been doing these lives since before the pandemic and really kind of picked up with them during the pandemic. And last month when we did one, it was my 50th. So this is number 51. And thank you to so many of you for being here with me tonight. I really appreciate it and love seeing you in the chat. So I saw some of you came in early and have been chatting with old friends and new friends. But if you want to quickly in the live chat say where you are from and maybe what you're knitting tonight to introduce yourselves to each other, that would be really fun. For those of you who have not watched any lives before, I like to kind of set things up so that you know what to expect. So I know some of you are watching this live, and many of you will be watching this later and couldn't make it while I was live. So although chatter is happening while I'm live in the live chat thread, I try not to look over there and read it that much. I keep an eye on it in the beginning to make sure there's no tech issues, to make sure you can see things. But if you post a question over there, it is very, very likely that I will not see it. Towards the end of the live, I will ask you if you have any questions, and then I will look over there and I'll read questions aloud and then answer them. But if they come too fast and furious, I will miss a few. So if you have a question, hold it. And then the other thing that you should know is if I bring something up and you want a link for it, I will be providing links to everything I talk about after the live is over. About a half hour after the live is over, I update all of the notes under the live with everything I've talked about. It's actually all written up. I just go through one more time to make sure I didn't like totally go off track and talk about something else and then need to find the link to add that in. So anything you're wondering about, I'll give you those links later. If I gave them to you now, what would happen is you would leave and go and look at those things instead of staying with me while I'm chatting with you. So, there is totally a method to my madness. So, welcome. I have quite the list to go over with you tonight. I try to keep it to one page. I had to make my font smaller tonight to make sure that I could fit everything on one page. Something that I am trying different tonight is I've kind of incorporated the Bling Tee and Bling Tank knit along into this live. So Bling Tee launched, what is that now? Last Thursday, and Bling Tank launched last summer. Goldie's wearing Bling Tank behind me, and we are having a Bling KAL right now in my Ravelry group, and we're knitting Bling Tee and Bling Tank, and we're knitting them together with the goal of finishing your tees and tanks by August 20th. So this is a fun summer knit along. You will have a summer sweater by the end of it. I think it's important to say that if you have already knit a Bling Tank and it is done, you are welcome to put that into the finished Bling Tee and Tank thread in my Ravelry group. You don't have to have started your project like starting this week. You could have started it sooner. So one of the things that I wanted to do in this live is a few questions have come up in the last few days about Bling Tee in particular, and I thought it would be fun to address them live with you all. For the Bling knit along, we kind of have a few different sessions together outside of our Ravelry forums, and that's something that's fun to do with knit alongs when we have some like lives and then some Zooms. So we have this live tonight where I'll be going over some details, and I'll bring this over so my head's not like completely going all the way over to my left, that is. And then we have a Zoom knit along on July 5th. and we have a Zoom knit along on August 2nd. That is tentative. And then we're going to have a party on August 20th for our finished bling tees and tanks, which maybe will be like some motivation for you to get it done so we can all hang out on Zoom together and show each other our sweaters that we've knit. You might get sick of seeing me in my sweater by the time we're done with this knit along. So this is if you want to get involved, if you want to be part of the knit along, all you have to do is buy the bling tee or the bling tank pattern. They are 30% off through July 6th. And then you will get the knit along information as a separate PDF when you purchase the pattern. And that will get updated with all of the Zoom links as we have those Zooms together. So if you've never done a knit along with me, I am very available, very supportive. I check in on forums multiple times a day. I find that if you have a question, somebody else probably has the same question, and I am sure to answer them because it helps other people in the process. My goal is for you to have just such a beautiful tee or tank by the end of this, and something that fits you well and that you are proud of. I lost my words for a second right as I got to the very end of that. I can see you all talking about your bling tinks, tees and tanks. It's hard to say. Your bling tees, let's just say that, in the chatter thread as I'm telling you about the knit along. So a few questions that have come up, and one in particular I really want to talk about is gauge. And the bling tee video does include a 75-minute the bling tee pattern includes a 75-minute deep dive video tutorial into everything I think that you need to know to knit the bling tee. So a lot of your questions will be answered in that tutorial. And I shot a separate tutorial with a new to me technique for knitting gauge in the round that I know that many of you have already watched. I talk about it in the video, and then there's kind of like this separate, I think it's about 8-minute tutorial on how to work gauge in the round. And Max and I have started shooting knit tips like that because it's really for things that I know will be used for more than one pattern. If I have them not kind of embedded into a video tutorial for something that's like a big knit along, then people can find them again and again, and maybe it helps them understand the style teacher I am, and maybe wants to help them join in on other patterns in the future. So the knitting in the round trick that I taught in that tutorial is a new to me way of knitting a gauge swatch in the round. And the reason that you need to knit a gauge swatch in the round for a sweater that's worked in the round is because when you knit in the round, you're always knitting on the right side of your work. So you're always knitting on every round instead of like knitting one row and purling one row. And that would be like for stockinette stitch is what I am discussing right now. Let me back up to that. So I always did this technique, and I'm going to show it to you under the camera. I always did this technique of knitting gauge swatches in the round where I carried my yarn behind my work when I went to work another row, and I would end up with these long floats back here. And if I made those floats loose enough, if I needed this yarn at the end of the project, I could rip it out and wet the yarn. But sometimes if you make these too tight, you end up having to cut them, and you kind of ruin that section of yarn, which is a shame. So this is the way that I've knit gauge swatches in the round for years, honestly. And then earlier this winter, I ran across a few different videos on Instagram that were like really short, like this is another way to knit a gauge swatch in the round, and my mind was like blown by it. So I think Patty Lyons had an Instagram reel that was like that, and then I ran into one or two others, and I didn't go and look if there were any YouTube videos, but I started playing around with it, and then Patty Lyons has it in her book, Patty's Knitting Bag of Tricks, so I read through all of her steps there, and then I kind of developed my easiest way of working it for me. But I think what is really important to say about this technique, and I'm just gonna kind of knit and show it to you, is that there's very few knitting techniques that are actually just invented by one person. Oftentimes, knitting techniques are shared and they develop and they grow as different knitters start to do them. So, I certainly never meant for any of you to think that I invented this technique. I think I was really clear in all my verbiage that I found it and it was a new to me technique that I wanted to share with you all. And I think a lot of you had never seen it before. So, I'm glad I didn't assume that you already knew it and I was happy to share it. So you can see that I just got to the end of a row and my yarn is over here on the left-hand side of my needle. And I'm wanting to knit again going across from right here, right? Because I'm wanting to simulate knitting in the round. And if I take my yarn and I measure about 3.5 lengths of the width of my swatch, making sure that my swatch is not kind of like truncated or shrunk, but it's like really stretched out to its full width. And I take 3, let's see, that's 2, that's 3, and I'll give myself kind of a little bit more than half more. That is about how much yarn it's going to take me to knit one row. So you can see I just manipulated things so that my yarn tail, it's not really a tail, my yarn loop that I just made is coming off to the left and my yarn ball is coming off to the right. And now I'm going to go ahead and work across, and a few of you are going to notice that I'm twisting the first and last stitch of the row. And that is just to help the edges of this gauge swatch be a little bit tidy. So if this is interesting to you and you want to kind of learn more about knitting gauge in the round, I'll give you a link to that video tutorial below when I'm done with my live, and you can certainly go ahead and watch that. But you'll see that what ends up happening as I work across this one row, this is a well-loved swatch. I've been working on it a lot lately as I show people this technique. When I get to the end, I'm going to knit that last stitch and twist it through the back loop. I just end up with these little loops left on the edge right there. And you'll see sometimes they're a little longer, sometimes they're a little shorter. But if I go for that 3.5 times the width of my swatch when it's stretched out, I'm not going to run out of yarn and have things be too tight. And then my gauge is beautiful. It is very important to block your swatch before you go to get your measurement for whatever it is you're knitting, whether it be the Bling tee or something else. Yeah, I love my ruler. I love my ruler. So you lay your ruler down to get a 2" by 2" area, and then you'll count your stitch gauge, and then you'll count your row gauge. And that brings me to a question that is coming up in the Bling Tee Knit Along. And it seems like a fair number of you are not having a problem getting stitch gauge, which is great. Stitch gauge matters more than row gauge, but you're off a little bit with your row gauge. And what I'm suggesting that you do with Bling Tee is knit the body and knit the sleeves, because those are actually knit to measurement and not knit to rows. And after you have knit the body and the sleeves, you can actually do the setup rounds for the yoke so that you join everything together. And before you cut your yarn to string on your beads, you can, or maybe you can cut your yarn because you're going to string on your beads and then you don't have your ball attached. And then take that body and sleeves that are attached together, put them onto scrap yarn or a very long piece of stitch saver and block them and lay them down and let them totally dry, and then check your gauge again. My gut is that the weight of your yarn and the weight of the sweater are going to open up your row gauge a little bit, and you're going to be much closer to your target row gauge and not need to do any shifting in the yoke. So if you stop and do that, it's very likely that you're going to end up having row gauge at that point, because when you're looking at this little swatch right here, it doesn't have a lot of weight on it, right? So your row gauge would open up just a tiny bit with weight on it, and that's probably why people's row gauge on their tiny swatches are a little bit tighter than it's going to be on your sweater. So that is what I would suggest that you would do if you are not getting row gauge. Over in the knit along, I'll make sure to throw to this example. I've written that up, but I think sometimes listening to me explain it is very, very helpful. And I can like give the timestamp for things because I think not making you like scrub through this whole thing looking for exactly this one little point that you really, really need to know. I just looked at the comments and I'm not supposed to, but I saw because I know that because I'm a bad person and I read the comments sometimes. I saw that somebody asked if they could use floss for the beads instead of pre-stringing the beads on Bling T, and I would not suggest doing that. When you place a bead with super floss, you're locking a bead onto a stitch and you end up changing your row gauge significantly when you do that, especially if you slip the stitch with the bead on it. You won't be able to get the size 8 beads onto this yarn if you are placing them on, and you'll see what happens when you place a bead with super floss. I wish I had examples of these two things, is your beads end up sitting like perfectly vertically, sorry, I'm scowling, perfectly vertically on the stitch, and they have 2 loops or 2 strands of yarn and 1 loop going through the center of that bead, versus if the beads are pre-strung, you've got 1 strand of yarn going through your bead, and your beads kind of have this like kinetic energy and they move a little bit on the knit, versus if they're placed, they're going to be like really stagnant and locked, and I don't think you're going to be as happy with the finished look as you will be as if you pre-string them. This is a very good segue into another question I got. And I actually got this question from another designer, Romy Hill, on an Instagram post that I posted yesterday about bead mixes. So I build bead mixes for the Bling T kits, which I sell in my shop. And I know many of you are stash diving and building your own bead mix. And I suggest with those bead mixes that you make them about, what did I say, like 75% size 6 beads, which have about 12 beads to the gram, and 20% size 8 delica beads, which have about 32 beads to the gram, and then about 5% of size 8 beads, which have about 40 beads to the gram. And the reason for that is the size 8 beads can get a little bit lost on the yoke because they are smaller, right? And the size 6 beads show up really beautifully, but they are much heavier. And then those size 8 delica beads show up really well. So if you make a mix, what you're doing is still using the same number of beads, but you're kind of like cutting down on the weight of all the beads with the yoke, because the danger that you have with a pattern that has glass beads in the top is that the yoke could get very, very heavy and kind of distort away from your body. So I've been really careful in the charts to make sure that nothing has like the ratio of yarn weight to bead weight stays pretty relative to each other, so that you don't end up with any distortion on the front of your yoke. So that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about as a designer when I'm doing something like this, to make sure that you're going to have success with your knitting. And that would have been kind of too big a deep dive to do in what was already a 75-minute tutorial, but it's the kind of thing that sharing that in lives gives you a little bit of the whys behind what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And thanks for listening to me yammer about my beads treatise. Another question I've got a list of questions here, was can I add length to my sleeves? And the answer is, oh, hell yeah. You can make your sleeve longer. Know that your arm tapers as it goes down. So you might want to cast on fewer stitches for a sleeve if you're making it like a 3/4 length sleeve, and then increase up to the sleeve count for the size that you're making. The most important thing is when you go to join for the yoke, that you have the same sleeve count stitch count that I have you casting on for that size, so that all of the yoke math works correctly. So easy to make your sleeves longer, definitely easy. You can ask about that if you are wanting to change something and you're not quite sure how to do that math. I can help you think about it. It's really not very difficult to make something a little bit smaller circumference and then make it a little bit bigger. That's like Knit Design 101 right there. One person, Sherry, I'm looking at you, had a question about she cast on for a smaller size sleeve And then she was wanting to join it up to the yoke. And in the thread, I'd actually suggested casting on for the smaller size sleeve, but as she worked that, increasing up to the next size sleeve. So Sherry, I know you already knit your sleeves, and I believe you kept the stitch count the same all the way up. So if you don't want to rip back and increase up to that size 7, I think you're going from size 6 to a size 7, so there's two things with that. With the size 6, I memorized my pattern for this. For the size 6, you're holding 23 stitches at the sleeve and body, and the size 7, you're holding 24 stitches. So you would want to hold 24 stitches so that the stitches you're holding for the underarm match the stitches that you're holding for the body. But then you have a 9 stitch difference, so you can work less decreases on the sleeve stitches. You would end up working 4.5 less sleeve decreases. So you'd end up working 4 sleeve decreases on both sides of the sleeve, and then 1 where you only work it on like the front or the back, and make sure you're doing that for the left and right the same. And if you look at I have a chart. I've got it all tonight. If I go to the overhead camera for a second, if I look at the chart, you can see that I marked the sleeve decrease rounds on the chart. So like this is the size 1, and if I count all the D's, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So if I was, let's say, getting rid of 5 sleeve decrease rounds, I could get rid of that one, and then I could get rid of that one, and I could get rid of that one, and that one, and then just work half on that one, and that would kind of amortize out that stitch. I use the word amortize, that's a big word. It would amortize it out and make it so that you allowed for that stitch difference in the sleeve. Watch this again when you get to that point if it helps you. Okay, let's see what else is happening on my list. Bead mix Y. Oh, did you guys see the tiny, cute, adorable little sweater that I knit for the Bling Tea tutorial? So I had someone on Facebook today ask me if I was going to be releasing the pattern for this as well, and the answer is no. So when we were on family vacation in Idaho, one of the things main stuff that I knit on that trip was all the little step outs for videos, so that it was easier for me to show you things in a shorter period of time without having like a whole huge sweater on my needles. And so I knit this little guy, but it doesn't make sense to write it up for something so small. It's the amount of work it would take to do that and make sure that it's tech edited and correct to the number of people who would actually end up knitting it. I know, it's not worth it for me or you. And you want me to do more things, but dude, it's so freaking cute, isn't it? I really love it. This has a little, we'll get rid of that. Nobody saw that. So this is the kind of thing that I make for tutorials. Some of you might have already seen him. He's adorable. I haven't tried to put it on the cat yet. One of you suggested I attempt to put it on Buffy, and I value my life greatly. So he will just eat me alive if I tried. But Buffy, she might like die in my arms and let me do it, but she would never forgive me. Never, ever, ever. So that's the little mini baby Bling tee. And that is one of the many things that is off my needles. So if I kind of like zhuzh from the Bling KAL into talking about all the things I've been knitting lately, step outs for videos. We've been shooting a lot of videos lately to get ready for this knit along and the cuff that I'm wearing. Lots going on. Besides knitting all of those step outs, what did I knit? Oh, I finished my Delight scarflet. So Delight was one of the patterns from LOLEMBER last year, and it was like a big long schlanket. And then I did a scarf, and I really wanted to do a scarflet version. This is Lisa Lamb's yarn from Labyrinth Yarn. I don't know if you remember this yarn that I bought at local yarn store day. It is hand spun, and I wanted to knit. It was not a lot of yarn on here. It was just a 2-ounce skein. And if I had it to do over again, I am going to completely wear it like this because I'm going to be able to just close it up in a jacket in the fall and winter. But if I had it to do over, I think I would have gone for even a less wide, a narrower that word would be narrower, not less wide. I would have gone for a narrower scarflet. So I am going to write this up as a scarflet, and I'm just going to end up having, I'm not sure if it's like 10 or 11 stitches less, but I'm going to use that same stitch from Delight because I think it'll make a great little scarflet, but it does want to be just a tiny bit longer and narrower, I think, especially so you can kind of like tie it easily around your neck. Lisa did send me some gorgeous yarn in the mail the other day that you're going to get to see soon, but not tonight because there's a lot already going on. I really love this, and I love the concept of doing a Delight in a handspun yarn or in stash yarn. It's going to be a really good stash buster to have a little scarflet, and I think a really good gift knitting scarf. The other thing that you can do with these that maybe is going to be the answer for this one, I love when I'm like thinking on my feet, is I can overlap this like this and turn it into a cowl for Cowltober in 30 seconds or less. And that might actually be the answer for this since it's a little bit on the short side for a scarf. And that's a great little cowl. And I will wear the heck out of it. So that's that story. But it's too warm here now for things like this. Although it was a little chillier today. And I know out there we are all experiencing bizarre extremes. We went from drought here to a very, very, very wet season quite quickly. And I know it is very hot in part of the countries. I know some of you are experiencing smoke. I think our air quality wasn't great today, but it's not like what other people have been experiencing lately. So my mind is with all of you, and you know, wherever we're at, and the unknowns, and are we going to fly? It's a lot lately. We just got to roll with all of it. Thirsty. Okay, so I showed you that. The other things that are off my needles that you are not seeing are the N Club project that is going to ship for all of you N Club members. That ships the middle of July. The reveal is going to be in August. I believe it's the second week of August. I just posted in our Facebook group. If you want to get those dates into your calendar, it is gorgeous. And it's not, I love the colors. It's not my signature color. It's my dear friend's signature color. And I might make her wear it on the cruise because it's going to look very good with all of her. I'm doing a cruise in August. I'll tell you about it later. But I have this idea that we can all wear, like have signature color night. And you know that I will be wearing bling tee. I have pants this color. I have shoes this color. I have jewelry this color. I think it'll be really fun to kind of, it's not hard to dress up in your signature color for most of us because we probably buy everything in that color that is like the color that we kind of gravitate to the most. So I think the idea of signature color night is really fun. I hope other people are in with me. The other thing that is off my needle is July's Lola's Choice kit. That's actually been off the needles for a little while. We had the photo shoot be after I came home from Idaho and before we went to Maine. It was a very busy week. And those kits are in the process of being built and they will ship on July 5th. So if your membership has lapsed to Lola's Choice, there are not a ton of kits left. It is not a kit I'm planning on doing. Some kits, we'll talk about that in a second. I do kind of add to my line of kits. The July kit is a really bespoke one and done special kit. And I think you all are really going to enjoy it. I had a great time designing it and working on it and playing with beads for that. Okay, let me think what else I've been knitting. Oh, do you know what else I've been knitting? A lot of Chillow Cuffs. Have you noticed like what's bouncing around on my hand as I haven't told you? So I've got a brand new kit. Do you all remember Chillow, which was I think I have a necklace right here. I just decided not to wear it tonight. Chillow was May's Lola's Choice kit, and it was a necklace, and it was a kit to make a necklace. Wow, how awkward can I make those words sound? It wasn't this color. It was this lovely purple color that I am not wearing right now. And I knew the moment that I started knitting this that there were going to be coordinating cuffs, and it wasn't possible in the kit, like basically funds wise, to do a cuff and the collar. So I added on extra, and I have just released kits in my Etsy shop just this afternoon. I've got 10 colors of Chillow kits. You will see that there are two different designs, that chasing and the chillaxing, and then there are actually two different lengths. So you can see the yellow one in this photo is wrapped twice around the wrist, and then the yellow is turmeric, and the other one is fire below that, and that one is wrapped once. And one of the things I'm very excited about the Chillow cuffs is I finally found a source for magnetic clasps. So I think it was Nicole in my Ravelry group a few months ago said that she had found magnetic clasps and that she was really enjoying putting them on her knit jewelry because it made it so easy to get them on and off. And I was like, okay, game on. I'm going to find them. I need to find things in larger scale. And I finally was able to find ones that I really liked. So see what I'm wearing right here? This one's a double one, and I just kind of have that one on so you can see how long the double strand is versus the single strand, basically double. But these guys, I've got 3 different colors on, and I've magneted them all together so that it's really easy to put it on and make like this one long strand right here with all of them on there. And I really am loving that. The other thing that released today, I've been on fire lately, is the Chillouette version of Chillow Cuff. So this is a mashup of both the chasing and chillaxing, which in last month's live, Mylene asked if it was possible to be able to do that. And I was like, is it possible? Maybe it is. And it turned out that it was possible. And so I knit that up and then included it in the photo shoot right before I went to Maine. So it is in the pattern now for any of you that want to knit that. This is a really funny photo. Pretend you didn't see that for a second. So in the last live, towards the very end, I think, oh, I'm going to have a brain fart. Someone asked me, you're going to be here and say it was you. Someone asked me what kind of grill I had because I said we were grilling a lot. And I was like, oh my God, I have the funnest photo to show you. And I couldn't find the photo on my phone. And I was like, I'm going to put it on Facebook. And then I totally forgot. So right after we named Chillow, and it was named after that cheetah case. Told the whole story last time, kind of silly. I looked out the window onto our deck, and I was telling you all that our grill, like Max is going to take our grill to his grave with him. It is like, I bought it in 2003, maybe. We just keep fixing it when it breaks. It looks like hell. It grills food really, really well. I think it was like $175 at Sears. It was like an okay grill when I got it. And I looked out the window. Let me see if I can get back to that photo. And I saw Zweeble hanging out on our deck on the grill. And like, this photo really shows you like how janky our grill is. And then I was like, it's a Grillo. So we were like calling him Grillo for days, for like grill and cheetah and Chillow. Really, you don't want to live with me. I can like make a pun out of anything. So that was like my little Grillo guy being really cute, just hanging out on the grill. I was like, clearly couldn't cook then until he got off of there. Little cutie, he's my favorite. Moving on from that silliness, the Chillow Cuff pattern will be, sorry, I saw somebody asking that. I just looked down as I was looking at this. It will be up soon. I think tomorrow. We're just finishing up the video and have to get that up. I try to make sure all the links in a pattern work before I post it, but I knew that kits aren't shipping for a day or two anyway, so I could get the kits up there. And if you are a current member of Lola's Choice, you did get a email with a discount coupon in it today. If you did not get that, let me know. And that is just something I've been doing for Lola's Choice members every so often as the spirit moves me to thank you for being part of the club with me. Really appreciate it. Oh, I just saw Valentina's here. And Valentina, you're the one who asked about my grills. So I just showed you that photo from last time that I forgot. I love it. Um, on my needles, because I like to tell you what's on my needles, is September's Lola's Choice. And that is because I'm leaving for the cruise on August 26th, and I need to have that locked down and ready to photo by like August 2nd, I think is my photo shoot. So I'm trying to get that one done. Not really on the earlier side, but you know, it's the yarn is actually all here for those kits. The goodies are ordered. It has a name that is Chef's Kiss. You're gonna love it. I am working on the cruise design that is in the knitting and ripping stage, as all good designs get to go through. So I'm having a fun time with that. And I am still thinking about a DK weight novice jacket. And I'm realizing that if I'm going to do that, I'm probably not going to be able to knit it, just given the time and what is happening on my needles this fall. But if I swatch it and choose a yarn that I really love and I still have those to play with, I can write it up and do the math and then pass that off to a model knitter to knit. And that might be what happens, but it might be that I'm more interested in working on the new than working on something from the past. Although I think it's very important to be doing both of those things because I have a big catalog and I don't always have to like reinvent the wheel every 2 hours, right? It feels like I do, but I don't know. So what I'm really thinking I want to do, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it work, is to do for Cowltober this year, do a cowl mystery knit along, because cowls are much smaller than like scarves, and it's a very bite size. Like it would be very bite size clues, right? You could have a full skein of yarn and a few minis, or just like 5 minis, and make a cowl. And we haven't done a mystery knit along, I guess, since last summer. We did Flola together. So I've got an idea percolating. I drew an idea, thank you, Bonnie, in the shower for my waterproof notes. And I've got an email in process with a dyer to see if we can figure something out. So it's been a while, but I think it's time for a cowl mystery. We'll see. I can't promise. I can say, let's try. I have a name for it that I'm not telling you, and everything. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, I can't show you any of that knitting right now, which is challenging because it's so secret lately. So many secrets. I do want to thank you for your feedback on the feedback form that we sent out called Pearls of Wisdom. This is the first time my friend Emily helped me kind of design a feedback form, because I realized I've never really done like a deep dive feedback with you all. And she was blown away by like my, I guess in the industry, they call it engagement, right? She was like, your people are very engaged. And I was like, yeah, I love them. They love me. We have like a mutual love affair with each other. And so if I'm going to ask for their opinion about what I do and what they would like to see, I think it's really fun for you all to get to share those opinions. And I've done that like in little ways, like, what do you think of this bead, or what should I name this? But doing kind of a, where do you find me? Oh my gosh, so freaking glad that 90% of you said I don't need to be on TikTok. Thank you. I appreciate you, because you're going to have to drag me kicking and screaming to TikTok if I was doing TikTok. So we ask questions like that, like, do you want to see Laura on TikTok? Where do you see Laura more? Instagram, Facebook, Ravelry. Where do you like to do knit-alongs? What are your favorite patterns from the last year? That was fun. Lots of love for Soul Light. Lots of love for Nice. It was fun for me to see like kind of what's resonated for you from the last year. One person said, enough with the thongs. So many of you said thong. Like, what would you like to knit? What do you think a good mystery? Like, what about this? Emily was like, they talk a lot about thongs, your people. And there were ideas for other thongs I could design. One person was like, enough, I'm done with the thongs. But that was like one of hundreds of you giving feedback who said that. So I'm not listening to that person. They didn't leave their name. Another person who did not leave their name said the most amazing thing. She said, wait for this, Beads are disgusting. So, what do you think we've been saying around my house for the last month and a half? We'll kind of be doing something. I'll be knitting something, or I'll be like building kits with Stephanie in the studio, and we'll be like, but beads are disgusting. And I just thought that was like so funny because like it's beads are 50% of what I do. That comment went on to say something like, that the person hoped that I would design more sweaters for women over the age of 50. And oh, so yeah, Bling Tank, that is more of a youthful look. I did make a whiter strap. That pattern's getting updated with a whiter strap. But what's super funny about it is that I'm over 50 and I design things that I want to wear, right? So all of this I'm telling you is to say that so many of you left the most amazing, sweetest, positive, helpful, like sometimes like real feedback, right? Not always just, I don't need to hear I'm so fabulous all the time. But what's the one comment I heard, my takeaway from that entire thing? Beads are disgusting. So prepare yourselves for a pattern called Beads are disgusting. Don't worry, that is not going to happen. One thing we did ask about in that Pearls of Wisdom survey was about LOLEMBER. And I know that many of you did LOLEMBER with me last year. And LOLEMBER was my first kind of foray into a countdown or advent calendar. It was started December 1st. It went through December 25th. You got a box in mid-November. You opened up an envelope a day starting December 1st. I designed patterns for it that used an Advent yarn kit if you wanted to do that, or you could go stash diving. Let's go back to my smiling face again. I had a great time putting together goodies. Some of them were serious. Some of them were very funny. Some were a little fluffier. My favorite thing in LOLEMBER is when I did kind of like those themed days where like one day you got soap, and then the next day you got cotton yarn, and then the next day you got the pattern for detang to make a thong shaped dishcloth, right? So it was kind of like themed in those 3 days. And so people have been asking me, yes, LOLEMBER is on for 2023, which is this year. I almost just said 2024. But I'm changing it a little bit, and I'm changing it in that I'm not going to make it 25 days. I'm going to make it 21 days. So 4 days shorter, because like 4 of those days or a few of those days were things that weren't as substantial, which is totally fine. I think it's fine to send you a piece of tea, like after I send you a thong cookie cutter, if I send you lavender tea to help you kind of like deal with the shock of the day before. That might happen still, but I can go a little bit bigger into things. And the thing is, what we discovered last year is if 300 of you sign up for LOLEMBER and there's 25 days, you have to multiply 300 by 25. And that's how many envelopes we're stuffing. So if I take out 4 days, in labor, I can put more energy into other pieces of it instead of like just having our labor being stuffing envelopes until 2 a.m. So I learned a little bit about like the flow of a calendar like that and how to make it work. I already have really fun ideas. I already know what I want to do is like the cooking thing. I have ideas for projects. One thing I really picked up on last year was that you all thought that maybe you were going to get a jewelry pattern after you got the bead mix that day, and it would be really fun to do like a multiple day. You get a cool clasp, you get some beads, you get the right yarn, and then I don't want to give too much away. You need zooms, I hear your words. Yeah, we're gonna make it fun. It's gonna be LOLEMBER 23. The plan right now is that is going to release next week to people who were in LOLEMBER last year to give them a chance to sign up first as a thank you for signing up last year. There will still be plenty of spots for people who weren't in LOLEMBER if they want to join up this year or like saw it last year and were like, oh yeah, I really want to be a part of that. So certainly, I believe we're trying to have it ready by the end of next week. And I actually believe that what I'm going to do is a deposit. So there will be kind of 2 prongs to LOLEMBER. There will be the box that is like the LOLEMBER box. And then there will be, if you want to buy a yarn set for the thing that I'm going to be designing with Emma's Yarn Small A Day set, then you can also add on that, or you can go stash diving for your own yarn, or maybe have an advent calendar from another yarn dyer. So I'll be offering up a limited number of those yarn sets as well. But I think what I'm going to do is a deposit on both of those and then charge you the balance when we get closer to the date, like into the fall, because there's no reason for me to take all of your money now. I mean, you can give me all your money if you want, but no reason. So I see people are asking how I join it. Sign up for my mailing list. And if you're on my mailing list, you'll get an email when signups are live. If you follow me on Facebook or Ravelry or Instagram, I promise to be loud about it. But an email, any for me or any designer or any yarny, if you sign up for our emails, you are bound to get them, versus if you make yourself kind of like to the whim of the algorithm. I can't promise you that Facebook's going to show you my posts and that you're going to see those posts. So you've heard this all from me before, but good to say again. That is LOLEMBER. I'm very excited about it. Pretty fun. And it was a good link from like that, doing that survey helped me know how that could be better. It was first year. Everything could always be better. Now, friends, I want to show you yarn I bought while I was away and talk a little bit about travel. So yarn, I didn't buy any yarn in Idaho, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Idaho in the next section. So I had to make up for that when I was in Maine. So last weekend I went to Maine to the Knitwit retreat at Searsport Shores, which when I said yes to doing this gig, which was like last October, September, maybe August, I think I Google mapped it to see how far away it was, but I don't think I really did, because it actually took me 2 days to get there. It was like 11 hours of driving. It was north of Portland by like 3 or 4 hours. And so I drove partway. I basically drove to Portland. I picked up my friend Melinda partway on the way. Hi, Melinda. I hope you're watching. I know you're going to watch it tomorrow. We had a super good road trip together. Really, really fun. We stayed in Portland overnight. And then we took a long time getting up to Searsport the next day. We went to Freeport and I bought some new camping chairs. Melinda had to hang out with me for almost an hour while I sat in chairs and then resat in a chair and then sat in another chair and then practiced getting up from one chair and shopping with me. Good times. Takes a special person to be patient with me when I'm shopping for camping chairs at LLP. And then we went yarn and fabric shopping, and we went to Clementine in Rockland, Maine, and I've always wanted to go to Clementine. I've seen their booth before at New York State Sheep and Wool, but I had never seen it I'd never gone there in person because I'd never been to that part of Maine. And one of the reasons I wanted to go there was to see some of the yarn from Nash Island. And some of you might know about Nash Island. It is an uninhabited island off the coast of Maine that has sheep living on it year round, and the shepherds visit the sheep multiple times a year. The most of the time they visit them is in the spring when they're lambing, and then for shearings in June, and then I think they come back in like October, November to shear again. But I got very, very lucky because they had 2 skeins left of their lamb's wool yarn from Nash Island. So the other yarns from Nash Island, I love them, but they're a little bit toothier. And this lamb's wool is, it's rugged, but it's really soft because it's from the first clipping. And I bought the last 2 skeins of this yarn. And you know that I'm keeping this one because it's my signature color. And I bought this one for you all for the giveaway today. So at the end of this video, I will give you a prompt, and one of you is going to win this. There are 175 yards on here. It is 2 ounces, and it's very gorgeous. I would say it's about like a sport weight, not quite a fingering weight yarn. Really, really beautiful. Very, very special. And I loved that they had 2 skeins left, and I was like, I'll just buy them both and I'll give everybody one and I'll keep one. Very obvious which one I'm keeping. I was happy to have those. I bought some fabric when I was there. I didn't bring it up here to show you. I bought some new linen fabrics because some of my linen pieces have been very, very worn in the last few years, and I just need to remake. I'll probably be remaking the same patterns, and I am home for the foreseeable future, so I am hoping to get some sewing done this summer so that I can kind of like my wardrobe. Some things are starting to look worn. They've been worn so much. Another skein of yarn that I got at the retreat is from Snallygaster Fibers, which is a new to me yarn dyer, and they had some really interesting yarn that I really liked, and I'm mad at myself for not buying it. But in our goodie bag, we all got this skein of Luxe Fingering, which is a 70% superwash merino, 20% silk, and 10% cashmere. And it has this beautiful tight twist on it. And one of the things I really love about it is sometimes a silk cashmere merino yarn, if it doesn't have a tight enough twist, will kind of have like some pilling or haloing happening around it. And it is not happening on here, which is really pretty cool. And so I'm going to save this for swatching. It could be a future club yarn or something. I think it's going to have incredible drape on it. I would be very excited to see lace and how lace would behave. So typically with a superwash merino, I would not knit lace because your lace kind of bounces back up. But I think that this content of silk and cashmere would help keep lace open, and it could end up being really stunning. So I'm interested to see how it will behave, and I will find out. There was just an ant on my yarn. I got this skein of yarn. Don't tell Bella. I know she doesn't watch these, so we're okay. I got this skein of yarn from On the Round, and it is a superwash merino bulky, and I want to make Bella just like a snow bunny hat, like a chunky, fun. It's just got these little like splotches of color. I think it'll be really, really soft and look incredibly cute on her, and just be a good new warm winter hat. She hasn't had a new hat from me in a while. She'll probably tell me it crushes her curls and she can't wear it, but so maybe it'll be a headband to keep her ears warm. But I just saw it and I wanted it, so I bought it. And then finally, total crazy purchase, I bought this 5 skein set of, what is it called? Plush singles. So it's a fingering weight single, which I do not normally buy fingering weight merino singles because they don't always wear that well. And there are 87 yards on each skein. And I don't know, you guys, this could make a really nice mystery cowl. It's not quite, I think, what is going to happen, but you know, in that vein, 5 skeins, I think we all have sets like this in stash. And I just loved these colors. It's called Moody Rainbow, which just speaks to me. I'm kind of a moody rainbow sometimes. I love that little bright hint of orange in there. I just had to have it. So I got it because that's how that works. And I love supporting dyers when I am doing events. One thing I totally forgot to show you is I was going to talk about the size chart, and then I didn't need to. But can I just show you something funny? Because I'm like, squirrel. I'm just getting this going underneath here. The schematic, one thing I wanted to kind of quickly look at for the Bling Tea knit along, but it's also really funny, is here's the schematic for Bling Tea. And one of the things I meant to pull this over, so Sherry was saying she wanted a smaller circumference sleeve, so she cast on her sleeve for the size 6, and then I was suggesting that she get up to the stitch circumference for the size 7, so I had meant to pull this up, but look what happened to my face on this sweater. I mean, come on, that's hysterical, and it's almost like we planned this, but we did not. So there's a little squirrel for you. I'm back. Staying focused. How are we doing on time? Okay. We are good. Do I get to have my drink? I told you guys earlier that I brought up a hard seltzer to have towards the end of this once I got through all of the real content, but that you couldn't tell Max because he does not approve of drinking in the studio. And I got this when I was in Portland, Maine on my way back from A Prey, which is a kind of a hard seltzery, kind of like a brewery, but for hard seltzer. And this one is so good. It's called Chili Nelson. I think it's my last one. It's blood orange, lime, chili, sea salt, hard seltzer. It is very, very good. Yum. All right, now I'm back. I promise I won't start slurring. If I do, I'll be like, and bye. No one wants to listen to somebody slur on a YouTube live, right? Okay. Going back to my list. Travel. So what I do not have for you tonight is slides from my trip to Idaho because there was no yarn on that trip. And I kind of shared in my stories as I was on the trip, and I shared a bunch of photos when we came back. But one thing I don't want to do with these lives is recap everything I've done on social media for the last month, because I think that's boring for me and it's boring for you, and I want to do new things. And it really was not a wool trip. And it was one of the first trips I've taken that had everything going on but wool in quite a while. And it was fun. We had an awesome time. And I really appreciate a lot of you gave me some great tips of things to do and see in the area. So we flew into Boise and we rented an RV from Through Outdoorsy, and we drove straight to the Ketchum Sun Valley area and stayed 2 nights there. And we found mostly campsites that were free or like $5, that were like down dirt roads. There's a lot of BLM land in Idaho, which is Bureau of Land Management. So you can camp in like designated sites, but a lot of them don't have bathrooms, and we had a bathroom with us. And so we stayed there for 2 nights, and then we went north up to Stewart in the Sawtooth Mountain Range, and we went whitewater rafting, which was Bella's thing that she really wanted to do, and that was a blast and a half. Really, really fun. I made Max sit in front of me, and he kept getting like faces of water, which was freaking awesome. I loved it. I was laughing my butt off. And then we camped around there, which was great. And then we drove towards Yellowstone, but on the way we went to Goldbug Hot Springs, which my friend had suggested, and one of you suggested as well. And that was about a little over an hour hike up a mountain. There were a few steep parts and a few like really easy parts of the trail up to these natural hot springs with hot water just coming out the side of a mountain. And they were super well mixed. So like the hot water got mixed with the cold water. And it was really one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life. I know I posted some video of it on that's on my Instagram and Facebook. And after we went to Goldbug, we drove on to Yellowstone, and that was like my least favorite camping experience because we were in one of the Yellowstone campgrounds and there were babies crying all night and dogs barking, but we did get a hot shower and that was very appreciated. And then we went on to the Grand Tetons. I saw a grizzly. Max and Bella missed it. I looked out the window at just the right time and it was on the side of the road, like eating a grub or whatever it was doing. And that was very exciting. And then what was very fun was like a little while later, we were driving down that road towards the Tetons, and coming down from Yellowstone, the Tetons are on your right. And we saw all these people pulled over and traffic got really slow. So I rolled down my window because we were like, whatever, it's trafficy anyway. And I was like, what are you guys waiting for? I thought there were like some planets having a convergence, or I don't even know what I thought. There were like big telescopes and cameras and people with gear hanging out in the back of trucks. And this woman was like, we're waiting for Grizzly 399. She's supposed to come through this way. And then I turned to Bella and I go, quick, Google Grizzly 399. And if you don't know what Grizzly 399 is, Google her. She's got Instagram, she's got YouTube, she's got Twitter, she's got Facebook. Twitter's how you can find out where she is. But she is like one of the most famous grizzly bears. So she is 27 years old right now. She has a cub, so she's like the oldest known, is it the word procreating when you have a cub? Mom, she's still a mom, grizzly in the Yellowstone region. and she actually attacked somebody a few years ago, but I guess her actions were deemed to be like normal grizzly behavior, and so they didn't put her down, and she's gone on to have a lot of babies since then. And I think during the pandemic she had 4 cubs. So I'll give you a link to her Instagram below, because there's like this iconic photo of her with her 4 cubs that is just like so precious. And I listened to a great podcast about her that's through Outside Magazine. So if you're traveling out that way and you kind of want to learn about the region, or you're just kind of interested in grizzlies, which it turns out I guess I am, because now I'm like Grizzly 399 obsessed. I see some people being like, she is a famous mama bear. So we didn't see her, but we're starting to wonder if that grizzly I saw was Grizzly 399, because I guess she is famous for kind of like getting away from the crowds and not being seen. Like she knows where they're going to be, and she kind of like goes underneath some brush and goes somewhere else. So it is possible that I saw her. I choose to believe that I live a charmed life and that I did. And then after the Tetons, we kind of headed back towards Boise. We had a great night in a national park that was beautiful. It rained our whole trip, by the way, which that was fun. We got wet a lot. And then we went to Craters of the Moon, which was an extraordinary volcanic field, like lava fields that had wildflowers growing all over them. It was absolutely beautiful. I really, really am so glad we kind of went a little out of our way to do that. And it reminded me a lot of Iceland. And then when I was chatting with the ranger about it, the ranger was like, people from Hawaii say that it reminds them a lot of home. And I guess there just aren't a lot of places that have those kind of volcanic lava fields. Craters of the Moon is one of them. And then Iceland is another one, Hawaii another one. So that was very cool. So let's see here. Make sure I'm getting to everything. So family trip, phenomenal. I heard somebody asked what Bella is up to now. She got a job in Baltimore that is very interesting, working with an addiction program. And I'll tell you, I'm just learning about it. I don't have my elevator speech about it yet, but she is doing some pretty incredible work, and I'm really proud that she kind of chose to go a route of a job that wouldn't be cushion easy. I'm having proud mama bear moments myself. Next up for travel, then I went to Maine. I've kind of like spattered in bits about it. I'm not sure if I will do Maine again next year with Nitwit. I might take a year off and hope that she asks me the following year, just because it was such a long drive that maybe every other year is the way to keep that fresh. But there's so much to do in that area and so much lobster and ice cream to eat that, of course, I want to go back again and again. I did. So my next big trip is the cruise. We are leaving August 26th from Amsterdam and going to Norway and Iceland and Shetland and Edinburgh, and then back to Amsterdam again. And I did just get confirmation that the cruise that I was hoping that we could do, there is room on the ship. So when I do a cruise, I like to make sure I can get a big knitting room that we have every night on the boat, so that we can all knit together and be together every night. And we were able to get that room, which is really the thing. Like, if I can't get the room, I don't want to go. And this trip we're not opening it for signups yet. We still have to kind of like write it up and figure out details. But it is the first 2 weeks of May, and it leaves from Rotterdam, and it ends in Copenhagen, and it goes to Norway, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, and Estonia, and Finland. So it goes to Helsinki, which I am thrilled to be able to go back to Helsinki. The moment I saw Helsinki on the itinerary and I saw Tallinn in Estonia, I was like, we are going there with the knitters, because it's going to be amazing. And I already know like what we want to do in Tallinn. I know what we want to do in Helsinki. I have a friend in Sweden, so when we do the Sweden port, hopefully we'll be able to like get some Swedish knitters there. But I'm already although I'm completely focused on the cruise that's happening in a few months, I'm thinking ahead to 2024. I'm looking, I think it's time to wrap up a bit. So I want to talk to you about what I have been reading You have not seen Marlola yet. She's excited to join you. And I'm not telling you the book I'm reading because I don't even actually know the name of it. So when I finished Demon Copperhead, I loved that book so much and I lived it so hard and I took a while to read it and just like I didn't devour it. I like had a long, slow, sweet meal with it. So I decided I was allowed to get some fluff, and the thing that I'm reading is so fluffy that I don't know its name because I like bought it on Amazon, and then since I read on my Kindle, I never see the name of the book. So I can't tell you what I'm reading, but I can tell you that when I start reading it, I fall asleep very quickly, which is great. And it will be done soon, and then I'll probably read something with a little bit more substance. But I am listening to a book that is superb, and it is called The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. And I think she's written 3 or 4 books. This is my first book by her, and it is stunning. It is an absolutely gorgeous narrative. It is told from the viewpoint of multiple characters. It is in theory it's sad, like the content is sad, it's deep, it's hard, but somehow I, instead of wanting to like avoid it and run away from it, the way the stories are told and the way that I'm wrapped up into it, I want to know what happens next. And I've been finding reasons to listen to it. Like I got more kit building done in the studio today than I meant to. Like I kind of like allot myself some time every day in the studio because it was so good. I didn't want to leave. And then I had to kind of like rush through some computer work because, you know, there's only so many hours in our day. So highly suggest that for a summer listen or read if you haven't. Some of you might have already read Ruth Ozeki and be like, oh, we know all about her. She's amazing. New to me, and so I love to share when I find something that I'm very excited about. You know, I love to share that. In terms of watching, I didn't do a ton of watching because I was traveling so much. But when I got back, I've been kind of finishing up some things, and I watched Wellmania on Netflix with Celeste Barber. That was hysterical. Although it's set in Australia, and I don't think I understood everything they said, and I would suggest maybe turning on subtitles if that would help you if anything gets confusing. Sometimes when things are like Australian or English, if I have subtitles on, it helps me understand what's going on, and then I don't need them anymore. But it's really funny, and you might enjoy it while you're knitting. I also watched The Bear season 2. I loved The Bear season 1. The Bear season 2 was a little easier to watch. It wasn't quite as like tortured and dramatic. It was very good. I devoured it, watched the whole thing. That I believe is on Hulu. And I have never watched Ted Lasso, and that is what I am watching next. And I've been saving it for, I need to do the cruise knits. I need to do the Lola's Choice knit. I know that I'm going to have lots of knitting time in the evening, and I am just going to devour Ted Lasso. I'm looking forward to that. Next up, I promised you somebody. So I would like to acknowledge before I bring this next person up that it is a slippery slope for my alter ego to have an alter ego. And it could be a quick trip to therapy, right? But I feel like Marlola is here to stay. I feel like Marlola inspires me to be my best self in the kitchen, don't you? I've never worn a button-down mint shirt in my life, nor have I ever had blonde hair. I think my eyebrows look fierce on Marlola. And so we're having a new section to my lives called, wait for it, are you ready? Marlola in the kitchen. It just makes sense. So this is my telling you about food. My food conversation is a little bit quick today because Marlola is the best part of this. And since I've been traveling, I have not been cooking very much. And I did just see a recipe. I think it was yesterday that I saw the recipe for what was it for? Oh, it was for a potato chip frittata. And it was on the New York Times Instagram page. And then they also have a recipe. And it's basically like 3 ingredients: olive oil, 6 ounces of potato chips crumbled up, and eggs. and you could add like onion or paprika or anything if you want to, but I am pretty excited to try the potato chip frittata this weekend. Bella and her friend are coming home. And I mean, how can you go wrong with salty potato chips and eggs and olive oil? The recipe definitely says no need to add salt. Potato chips are salty enough. So I will report back and let you know if it is a win or a not win. But it sounds pretty good to me. And then the other thing I'm just trying to stir it up a little bit is we discovered ginger juice recently. I think this spring I had tried like this little ginger turmeric shot from somewhere, and then I was looking to see if I could get more ginger juice. And so I ordered a bottle of it on a whim, and it turns out to be something that we are putting in everything. Like I have a matcha lemonade with my collagen in the morning, and now I add a splash of ginger juice to that, and it makes it just like a little bit spicy and interesting. It is very good in a vodka martini. It is excellent. Max says I have not tried this yet in cold brew, like in iced coffee if you put a little bit of ginger juice. I've been using it in salad dressings, in marinades. What else have I put it in? I put it in my smoothies. It's almost like what haven't I put it in? And what I haven't put it in is my tomato sauce with Marlola. Although Marlola might want to try that as a possibility for the future. So that's my like not super exciting food section because I just haven't been cooking very much, but I'll get back to it this weekend, I'm sure. My next live, I believe, is going to be July 26th. But if you're signed up for my newsletter, you will know when my next live is. I always announce them there. I try to give you a heads up when they're coming. I put it like in the PSs, and then it kind of like builds up into the newsletter as we're getting closer to it. I really appreciated on the last live what I asked for the giveaway. And to remind you, this is the yarn that was the giveaway from the last live. I went stash diving for all golden colored yarn that I had in my stash because it was my golden anniversary. So it is a pretty big haul for the person who is going to win this. And I asked you all for like a takeaway from one of my past lives, like what you love about my lives, what you think could be different about my lives, just kind of like a memory about them. And there was a lot of stuff that I forgot about that you reminded me about. So reading through that comments was really fun for me. So thank you for taking time and writing those comments, because I did read them all. And I was like giggling about that bunny hat and like some of the lives from during the pandemic where I know I was like entertaining myself as much as I was entertaining you. But the winner of that golden anniversary yarn pile is Cheryl Edwards 33. Congratulations, Cheryl. I haven't seen if you are on here or not. And she said, I've been watching the lives for several years when I can catch them, but always glad to know they were recorded for when life happens and I can't see the live. Your lives are like how my grandma used to cook. A little of this, a little of that, and a lot of your time and effort. It all works out into a wonderful show. Thanks. So thank you, Cheryl. That was very sweet. Get in touch with me and I will get your ginormous pile of yarn out to you. Pretty exciting. The giveaway for this live, I'm getting ready to say goodbye. And before I do, I forgot to ask if there are any questions. Are there any questions, or are there any therapists out there who are worried about my alter ego having an alter ego? I'm keeping an eye. I haven't, I kind of caught a few as they came up and kind of tried to pepper them in. I remember Susie had a question about if I had a pattern that was mostly garter stitch, because she's wanting to practice working continental instead of knitting English. Continental is when you hold your yarn in your left hand. English is when you hold your yarn in your right hand. And I had to kind of think for a second, because I don't have a lot of patterns that are majority garter stitch. The ones that I do, sometimes the like magnify shawl, the edging is garter stitch but also lace, and then the body of that shawl is garter stitch. Same with Spumante. I think Spumante might start with garter and then go into lace at the very end, but it could be the other way around where it's lace first and then garter. But one thing, Susie, you could do is you could knit like basic boomerang or something like that, like one of those really basic boomerang shawls that I have, and do it in garter stitch instead of do it in stockinette stitch. And that led me to the idea of that you could look at my Craftsy shawl shaping class, because that has kind of recipes for a bunch of different simple shawls in it, like triangular shawls and square shawls and shawls worked from the center out and boomerang shaped shawls. So any one of those you could do in garter stitch. What I would suggest is making sure that your yarn is really, really fun to make up for the garter stitch maybe not being quite as fun. So like a Noro or a really fun hand-dyed yarn, or like some Freya fibers, or something like where you're going to kind of have that progression movement of color to make up for the just garter stitch. I mean, there's a time and a place for garter stitch. I do love it. I just tend to incorporate it in with other more complicated stitches as well. Questions. Goldie is wearing a reversible undulating waves scarf. Max thought that she looked boring and not colorful enough, and so we went and grabbed that, and that is what she is wearing. Carol wants me to show you the back of Solar Tea, but I think, do you mean the back of Goldie? Because she's wearing Bling Tank, Carol. I think that's what you mean. So I'll show you with the wider, and she's so crooked today. We're just going to straighten her out a little. Oh, Goldie, you're a hot mess. So that's the back of Solar Tea, and, oh, sorry, not Solar Tea, Bling Tank, and that is the front. Judy, I'm not sure if I understand what your question is. What would gauge be with smaller needles on Bling Tea? If you ask that over in the Ravelry forum, I'll be able to kind of get more information from you, so I make sure that I'm answering that question. Another question is, what yarn is Goldie's scarf made of? This was maybe a skein of yarn I got from a Good Yarn in Sarasota, like 15 years ago. I think it was called Octopus's Garden, and it's a superwash merino fingering weight. So any fun hand-dyed superwash fingering weight sock yarn is great for reversible undulating waves. Georgia gave Marlola the go-ahead, or Lola the go-ahead, to have an alter ego. So Slippery Slope is Marlola having an alter ego, I think. I don't see any more questions. So let's wrap this sucker up. Thank you guys so much for watching tonight. I really appreciate having you all here and listening to me. I hope you all learned something. I hope you got some knitting done. And feel free to ask any other questions over in the Ravelry forum or below this video when I'm done. If you could let me know to win this gorgeous skein of Nash Island yarn that I think also would look very good on Goldie, by the way. Let me know what you've been cooking lately, because I clearly could use some inspiration. Marlola and I are, you know, drinking ginger juice and making frittatas with potato chips. So let me know what you're cooking lately. I don't think you can leave links because the comments might not get posted. So just tell me with words what you're making. I know how to Google things to find what you're talking about. You can tell me kind of where you found the recipe. I'm pretty good with the Google. So thank you so much for watching. Don't leave that comment in the live chat. Leave it below the video as soon as we are done. Have an awesome July 4th weekend to those of you in the States, and everybody stay safe and cool, okay? Happy knitting.